you guys, welcome back to Drawing with Michael. So this morning we're going to do a really quick warm-up sketch on this beautiful Monday. Holidays are coming, so I'm going to be changing a few things up here on the channel. I'm going to be getting a new camera, so this will be the last time that we'll be using the Canon, at least in this capacity. This morning I'm drawing on Bristol board using a simple Collie Race pencil. Those of you who have seen these in other videos always, kind of question, why artists use these. One of the reasons why is because they're erasable. Second, they don't smear, and whenever you Xerox them, they're really easy to, Xerox blue. I think whenever you Xerox them, they Xerox black, I believe. I'm not really sure, so don't quote me on that. So this morning, let's focus a little bit on what we're drawing. It's going to be a dragon. Just a really simple little illustration. So what I'm doing right now is I'm basically going in and doing my illustration roadmap. I like using, some people use different methodologies to create their artwork, whether it's the construction method, whether it's the gesture method, whether it's the silhouette method. All these methodologies, how you utilize them is going to, depend on obviously your workflow and your understanding of how illustration works, but also how you were trained and how you observe life. I'm constantly trying to figure out different ways to, do illustration. From digital illustration to traditional illustration, it really is important for me to find different ways, because it makes a quote-unquote, not a stale job, but it keeps me rooted in learning, and that is a really big deal for me. Learning is a really big deal. Overall, I'm constantly trying to push things a little bit further, trying to learn new programs, trying to learn new ways of doing things. And those of you who have been with me on this channel for a while really know that. As you see right now, I've just got a bunch of scribbles, but what I'm doing is I'm kind of sculpting. You saw me put in these initial forms, these initial shapes, and what I'm doing now is I'm kind of figuring out where I want things to go. Since it is a dragon, dragons are pretty easy, depending on what kind of dragon it is, depending on, what kind of story you're trying to tell. You'll hear, individuals and artists telling you, story is the most important thing. And it kind of is, because without story, without context, without how this particular character lives in his environment, it's not going to really convey the emotion. So what I'm doing right now, again, is I'm figuring out what I'm doing. So I wanted him to carry a really big lollipop. Again, for those of you who have been with me for a while, know that I love candy. I love candy. I like candy. I like sweets. I'm kind of that, that result of my mom, who is also a sweet lover. She loved cooking cakes and pies, and it was kind of a stress reliever for her. And, that's, you can look at it as fortunate and unfortunate. Because what happens, whenever you eat a lot of sweets growing up, if you don't brush your teeth, you end up having teeth problems. And I've had my fair share of teeth problems growing up. Only lately did I really understand the real value of how important it is to take care of your teeth, because what happens later on in life, you end up not having any. And I still have I still have some teeth issues that we're, resolving, but, I've really put that in my kids to take care of their teeth. Not to get on a teeth issue here, but so you can see right now I've already placed in all of the vital elements that I really need to complete the illustration. So let's go ahead and put a simple background. And what I'm what I'm doing now, I've got this 1 foot right here, so I'll put some grass in here and there, and I'll have that one toe kind of coming up right there, and this one right here, got that other toe kind of hidden. And so now that I've got this placed in, I can start putting in those peripheral elements such as your arms. Since it's a really big sucker, I'm going to angle this just a little bit, just a little bit. Let's have his kind of a little bit of an overbite. I want him to have a little bit of overbite. Just a little bit. Here. And I want his head to be slightly positioned this direction. And then I've got his arm that kind of swings around. He's got his hand, his fingers. Maybe that finger is out a little bit. He's kind of carrying. And since I didn't do thumbnails, I was wondering, maybe this arm comes around here, kind of crossing his body. This one is kind of going over like so. And you can see slowly but surely the illustration kind of takes form. Now, in digital illustration, there's a lot of leeway to make mistakes, and that's why you draw light whenever you're doing things traditionally. Because if you start hammering in that value, that line value, suddenly you'll realize, gosh, you're going to make a change, and it's going to be hard to erase, and you'll be able to see it. You know, drawing light is, again, one of those things. And what's nice, too, is drawing light, you know, whenever you go to erase and put in your hard line, again, you're not going to see that blue line. And two, whenever you're using a blue line or a red line and you're putting in marker, a lot of times that alcohol will actually blend in some of this blue, and that actually helps. So let's go ahead. His head's turned just a little bit. So let's go ahead and erase a little bit here. You got that nostril here. That other nostril is going to begin on the other side. You won't be able to see it. It's going to be a little bit smaller. So let's have, here's the center line. So now I'm going to start putting in some of the small details that kind of make him what a dragon looks like. Okay. I wanted to do real time on this today, as much as I can, just to give you an idea, how long I actually spend on these warm-ups. I try not to spend more than 30 minutes, but a lot of times I get carried away. And that's not necessarily a great thing. Here. It's got his little ear. No, I don't like that. What's fun about doing stuff like this is it is a mythical creature, so you can really push and pull those forms as much as you desire as an artist. So don't feel like you have to adhere to any one particular type of design cue. If you want to add huge horns, or if you want to add whatever, that's up to you. So what I'm going to do, I like his eyebrows like this. They kind of frame his eyes a little bit. And then two, I'm thinking, okay, so this is the outer part of his mouth, and we're in kind of a 3/4 tilted up, so we see more of the bottom part of his bottom jaw / lip. So now you see me drawing these lines right here. These lines help me identify this as a three-dimensional form. So the more and more that I put in these little lattice construction lines, again, it helps me determine where stuff needs to go. So, and I'm moving around the illustration because, believe it or not, as I am doing this, my brain is seeing everything, but I'm focusing on one area and it's balanced. So I'll balance things over here, I'll work over here, I'll work over here, and that literally balances things as I move along. If I stop and I start rendering in one area and I spend a lot of time in one area, I'll realize pretty quickly that, you know, I'll get a disproportionate figure, you know. I can remember in college, you know, not only in junior college, when I was in junior college, but also when I was at art school, the art of the gesture is very important. You want to be able to read a gesture, being able to read the volumes, being able to read the weight. Even right now I'm seeing I need to give a little bit more weight to this front part. You know, just to understand where stuff goes, you know, how gravity affects your drawing, and all these things, you know, and I told this, and I explained this whenever I was teaching my college students, and I said, hey, you know, a lot of times we can't quite figure out why something's not working, and, you know, it is that feeling that we get as people whenever we see something. You know, a lot of times you'll see something and you'll say, yeah, I like it, and it's really fast. Or you'll say, nah, I don't like it. And then whenever somebody asks you why don't you like this? A lot of times you can't explain why. You know, why don't you like it? It doesn't make any sense. It's got all the things that you like there, and you know, it's important for us to really question and understand the why. And a lot of times, you know, maybe it's a disproportion, maybe it's a shape, maybe it's, you know, maybe a face isn't correct. You know, and since we do live in that three-dimensional world, a lot of times, you know, if a proportion is off, especially in the human body, you know, there's quite a few movies out there that are three-dimensional, you know, 3D rendered and not stylized. So years ago, there was a movie called The Polar Express. And since we're, you know, going to be coming in on the holidays, I'm sure that a lot of you are going to be possibly watching that movie. And that movie suffers from something called the uncanny valley. And that valley, you know, you have your humans, and then you have your robots. And then you have this long valley where you have, you know, your cartoon, your stylized, and then you get all the way down here, and then you have the robots, and you have kind of your androids and your cyber, you know, your cyber convoluted human android type creatures. And then down here they collide. Where they collide is called the uncanny valley. And you can't quite, it's not quite human, it's not quite robot, it's manufactured. And sometimes that's a hard thing to get rid of. You know? And you'll look at a figure, you'll look at something and say, man, that just doesn't work for me. Why doesn't it work? You know, and it's because of the uncanny valley. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm correcting some of the anatomy that's kind of jacked up a little bit. And I want this arm to come around, so here, begins there, so where it's going to come here. And then there's the other arm. So we can go ahead and get rid of that. So he's holding a giant sucker. I remember when I was doing a little vacation run, because we used to live in Orlando, and we would always have some type of season pass, whether it was Disney or Universal Studios, and you know, we were at Universal Studios in Harry Potter Land, and we bought one of those huge suckers from the candy store over there. And my son, he was just so happy, because I remember growing up, you know, going to Disney, that was the one thing, I remember that was the one thing that I wanted. I wanted that giant sucker. It didn't taste very good, but it was so colorful, and it really exemplified my viewpoint of what Disney was, a colorful, magical place where they had giant candy. And, you know, I always got one. That was my one thing. I always wanted that giant sucker. And I remember I bought him one because I wanted him to experience that same, you know, that same feeling. And he had it less than probably 30 seconds. And he dropped it. I mean, he was probably a little bit too young to have the giant sucker. I think he was probably about 6. And, you know, he dropped it. And it hit the ground. And, you know, it hadn't been opened yet. And it hit the ground and it broke. And I was like, oh gosh, that's just so bad. Yeah. And let's go ahead and break that silhouette a little bit. You gotta be careful of tangencies. But I do want to show that this sucker, this circle, is behind his jawline. So I'm gonna push that form just a little bit out. Have that come around just a little bit. Anyway, so, you know, I picked it up and I was like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, because he was already starting to cry. And I'm like, it's all right, we can still eat it. And it was still attached here, but it was like this, and then part of this was like this, and both these pieces fell off, and he was only left with this. It was so sad. You know, and I had to kind of play it off. So his experience with the giant suckers was not like my experience with the giant suckers, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, so this is the point where I want to explain to you a little bit about composition. Composition is your relationship as a viewer to the drawing. As the artist, you have to formulate or create the composition to lead the viewer's eye. Since I have him, now typically what you're going to do is you're going to utilize the entire canvas. Now in the digital environment, I can, you know, cut and paste, and I can chop and I can crop these things, and a lot of times you'll see these artists create thumbnails to work out composition. And composition is one of those things that is supposed to have balance, and, you know, balance, movement, and how you lead the viewer's eye. Yeah, I don't like this right here, so I'm already starting to see some issues. So I've got the creature right here. Here we go, that's a little bit better. Have that knee come up a little bit higher. I'm going to have, it's going to come here, here. Okay. And since this is just a simple sketch drawing, I'm not too worried, you know, about certain aspects of the drawing, but I still want to have balance. So I've got this huge circle here. I got this kind of movement, dividing movement. So I want to have something here, right? Because it's kind of like that, but I don't want it to be as big because I don't want it to compete with this shape. You can see how your eye already comes here, and maximum, you know, it's got that contrast where his arms are, and then you've got this large sucker. So maybe I want it to have some swirls. Kind of like a pinwheel sucker. And that's fun. Okay, and then I want to have, again, every little element helps when you do something like this. Those little bony scales that come up. I'm going to move my phone out of the way. And then his tail kind of comes up. So I've got this circle in the background. Again, you have a repetition of shape. And now I'm going to have something right here. Maybe a rock. Secondary rock. So what that does is it balances the entire shape here. It still doesn't compete. It's not competing with that shape, but it balances. Because if I have this huge amount of negative space, what that's going to do is, even though it depends on how I color it. If I were to color this as a darker hue or a darker value, then again, it's going to pull my eye in. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to create a little bit of a rock here. Okay. Okay, I need to watch again those tangencies. A tangency in a drawing or a tangent in a drawing is something that will put two forms on the same plane. So right now, these rocks are in the background, okay? Then I have him, and then I have the sucker, which is in the foreground and in the background. So I put his cheekbone, or the cheek, over that because again I want it to show that it's in the background, and then I've got all these little peripheral elements coming in the foreground. So I'm thinking background, midground, foreground. And if you have a tangency, let's say I want to have okay, here's a good example. So right now you can see that the cheek is in front of this circle. If I were to go ahead and I were to change the shape of that cheek, and I were to have these two elements right here collide, right there, suddenly what does that do? It puts this part of the cheek on the same plane as this, and they're interfering with each other. And that's one of the things that, you know, I've struggled with throughout my career, is recognizing tangencies. So whenever you see two lines coming together and they're intersecting, like right here, see how this line comes up and it really mirrors and it collides with the end of his nose, that is going to cause a problem. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and erase this line out. Again, drawing light, very important. So I'm going to go ahead and come down, and I'm going to have again that line come around, and I need to be very conscious. So like right here, there's a tangency because the top of that horn is intersecting with the very edge of that circle. So I'm going to go ahead and have that come up, come up, come up, down. Okay. Have that eyebrow come down because I want it to be in front of that horn. So now I'm going to start putting in a lot of the details that are important to make a dragon look like a dragon. So we're going to have his eyes come around like this. Okay. Good. Good. What I'm doing now is just again shoring up some of the finger elements that I want to make sure don't cause any issues, because he does have dragon fingers. He's got these claws that come out. He's holding. Okay. And I got that thumb right there. Thumb. Okay. Maybe this comes out a little bit more. See, what I'm doing now is I'm doing a side-by-side comparison. I'm trying to figure out the anatomy. You know, I've got this nice three-dimensional form, and I've got some overlaying elements here. Because whenever you have two elements that kind of fold over, like on your finger, I use my hands a lot whenever I look at folds, because I've got some nice folds in my fingers. So you'll have that, and that form will come out. It'll bulge out a little bit. So it'll bulge here, and then it'll bulge again here. I'll have the wrinkles kind of come down. And I'm constantly coming back and looking at the drawing and trying to determine if it's right, if it's wrong, what I need to adjust, you know. So let's go ahead, we'll do this, do this. And that's kind of bulging out a little bit. So now let's give him a couple little bumps. Let's go ahead and draw this down. Okay, so in this moment, here's what I'm thinking. And it's important that you understand how, you know, instead of just watching me do it, I want to talk about it. Because it's important for you to understand and know and listen to how my brain is formulating and coming up with the solutions to the issues of the drawing. So, I get a lot of times people asking me, you know, how do I make a drawing look three-dimensional? Well, you're already thinking three-dimensional. You see in 3 dimensions. The problem comes when you start drawing on a 2-dimensional surface. And what you're doing is you're starting to draw 2D, height, width, but then you're missing the depth because you can't reach into the paper. So what I like to do is I like to draw these little, so like right here I started out with that circle, and then I came in and I drew that big bean with a third bean. What I like to do, well, there's a tangency right there. What I like to do is to draw these construction lines. Just like if I were to draw something like this, which is a sphere, and we've all seen this, right? Kind of like a basketball. And suddenly we think, oh, I can see that, I can touch that. I'm used to this. This is what I'm used to. So you can do the same thing with your drawing, but you do it in places that help the drawing. You don't sit there and draw every single line, right? You don't want them to look kind of like a Michelin man that has all these construction lines all over him. You want it to make sense in the context of the drawing. So what I'll do is, like whenever I draw the part of his of the different colors, so you'll have the underbelly and then you'll have the top part of the scales. So you'll see me draw this, and then I'll follow that form all the way down. All the way down. And I'm thinking like this. I'm thinking three-dimensionally. So then I'll come back and I'll draw like right here, and then you'll see me maybe do something like this. But I'm not going to do it here, here, here. That one little line helps me identify where stuff needs to go. So then that'll curve around, because again, he's got that slight overbite. And since this part of the mouth comes up, it's going to go around the tooth. So again, I'm thinking three-dimensionally. It is a, you know, it's funny, I've had a lot of people comment about that. It is a simple, practical thing to do, but a lot of times we don't do it because it's like we're drawing in that second dimension, but we forget, you know, oh, I think three-dimensionally, therefore I need to kind of sculpt the drawing. If you sculpt the drawing, right? If you're thinking in your mind's eye, you've heard that terminology, I hope, your mind's eye, then you're going to be sculpting things, you know? It's like whenever I started doing this, I probably can't see as much of that top, you know, of that particular arm, because again, you know, thinking like this, if his arm's over here and it's connected on the back side of this circle, I'm not going to be able to see as much of the shoulder because the shoulder is hidden. So what I've done is his arm is reaching over, so I'm seeing a little bit more of that. Now I won't be able to see the top part, probably won't, the top part, because again, it's hidden by the bulk of his body. Okay. So now what I'm doing, again, I'm thinking this is a three-dimensional form, just like this is, so I can't just draw a circle like that, okay? And if it's over here, I can't draw just a circle facing me. It has to be turned because it's on the side. So now, you see how I'm creating ovals on the side? And whenever that form comes up like this, if I were to draw a circle and I turn it, then I'm not going to see as much of the back side of it. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead. We'll do some of these skin folds just to help it along just a little bit. Yeah, see, that's going to create a tangency, and I don't want a tangency. Okay. So, just to make sure that I get this done, I'm going to go ahead and put on a really short time lapse while I wrap up the drawing and I start the inking process. Okay. Let's go ahead, see that circle comes around. I had that circle a little bit too far out. Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so now I'm going to add color. I've inked the drawing in. What I'm doing now is I'm just getting rid of some of those sloppy lines. I don't want to get rid of all of them because, again, it adds, for me anyway, it adds to that life of the drawing. And plus, whenever I put the alcohol marker down, it's going to blend in some of that blue line that's in there. And it actually helps a little bit. Now, if you're doing this for a client or as a professional, then, you know, taking a screen grab, or not screen grab, taking a picture of it and getting rid of some of those blue lines might behoove you to do that if you're going to go digital with it. But since I'm going traditional, it doesn't really matter. And plus, I'm not doing this for a client, I'm doing it for you, for fun, to show you that drawing is not some unobtainable thing. if you have the mindset that you will succeed and that, you know, you got this and you know, the basics, then man, I don't see why you can't do something like this, right? So I've got a myriad of different markers. Recently I purchased these Blick from Dick Blick from Blick Art Materials. I haven't really had a chance to use these because typically dragons for me are going to be your blues, your reds, your greens, your oranges, and even though that does have a few oranges, those are more earth tones. And I do have these right here, which is Parku. Parku makes a really good marker, but for consistency overall, I like using a Hoo-Hoo or Copic markers. I have a huge collection of Copic markers and Prisma markers. So let's see. Prisma markers. Let's see. And since they're alcohol based, you don't have to worry about really getting in there and messing things up, because you're going to have a nice blend. So I treat this just the same way as I do as if I was going to do this digitally. So I'll go in and I'll put in what I call local color, which is, you know, your color that doesn't have any light or shadow in it. So my local color is going to be this particular color. It says G140, which is that's an interesting color. It's called horseradish. So is there a particular way to apply marker? Probably, and I just do what works best for me. If there's a line or an ink line that goes like this, typically what I'll do is I'll try to follow that ink line like so, and then I'll try and emulate the planes that I see, the planes being the facets of him, of his character. You know? So I'll go in and do... And I won't stick in one particular area, because what happens whenever you layer these markers, if you watch, I'll layer it again. See, now I've got a little bit of a shadow on there. So I'm basically going in and putting in one pass of the marker, and then you'll see me go back and I'll put in just a hint of shadow as I progress through putting in the local color for him. And you see I'm also going and I'm blazing through these spots, which is fine because I'll end up coloring those spots a different hue color. Okay. And this first pass is just literally to put in that local color. I'm not getting into light and shadow yet. I just want to get these basics put in. It's kind of like draw by numbers or paint by numbers. You know, you decide on what color works best in the environment that you're working in. You know. Okay. And alcohol markers blend really well. You know, and you can cross-platform, not platform, you can cross-brand, it doesn't really matter. I haven't found an alcohol marker that blatantly doesn't work. Although those $5 store markers weren't great, they still worked and they still blend. For those of you on a budget that don't really want to spend a lot of money on markers, marker sets can be astronomically expensive or they can be reasonable. You know, you can pick up a decent set of Hoo-Hoo markers or Parku for about 30 bucks and you get about, I don't know, 60, 50, 60, maybe 48, somewhere around those numbers. And you know, that'll hopefully, and if you really want to go in cheap, just go to the $5 store. They've got, you know, whole sets of markers in there for $5. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of light and shadow in. I'll just go in and start accentuating some of these forms a little bit more, and it'll be slight. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. See, it's the same color. I'm not doing anything rocket sciencey here. I'm just thinking how the light's going to affect him in this environment. So he's probably on a sunny day, so the light's going to be overhead, right? So I'm just going in and putting in some of these darker values. Essentially, I'm just saturating the color a little bit more, you know, not letting as much as that paper show through, as much of the paper. So here's a really good example. So you see that it's nice and highlighted right there, so the highlight's probably going to be like right there, so I need to think, okay, so this is where the shadow's going to be. And don't be afraid to just do it. If you mess up, you mess up. It's not a huge deal, right? Okay. And two, you know, you'll see me go outside the lines occasionally. You'll see me kind of mess up, quote unquote mess up. But in actuality, I'm just having fun. You know, I'm making sure that I cover my bases here as far as where I think the light and shadow are going to be. But these little nuances help add character and flavor to the drawing itself. Okay, so then that's that local color. I'll keep that handy dandy. And this is very similar, but you see this has a little bit more yellow in it. This has a lot of blue in it. So let's go ahead and bring that to the side. And lime green. I want it to be kind of like a yellow. Okay, so let's do like a flesh. So that'd be like a flesh. I don't know. Lemon. Okay. And it's very important that you use a not waterproof, but a smudge-proof ink. The ink pen that I used, for those of you who are interested, you can buy these at Hobby Lobby. It's Japanese ink, which doesn't smear, and I believe it's waterproof as well. Because if you start putting alcohol on a marker that smears, you'll get black markers, black marker tips. It'll stain the tips, and also it will smear your drawing, and you do not want that to happen. Little tip for you guys. Okay. I am notorious, and my family will attest to this, I'm not a huge fan of yellow as a primary color to, you know, color things. Yellow to me is, I use it for light, I use it to warm things up, I use it, you know, to bounce light, I use cools and warms and oranges and reds. But yellow, a lot of people say, why don't you like yellow as a, like if you were to paint a car yellow? You know, I'm like, I'm not feeling it. You know, I think it probably stems back to whenever I was younger and working with crayons. And what's typically one of the first colors that you gravitate towards and you want to utilize when you color? Yellow. And you start using it and it just doesn't show up. It's in that color spectrum. It just doesn't want to show up. And that was very frustrating for me growing up. I'm like, man, why doesn't the yellow want to show up? Okay, so let's go and do the other part of his foot. Good. Okay, let's put you back. And then let's do... okay, now I'm using... nope, that's not going to work. So in this situation, I always like to have a contrasting color for the like the horns or the nails or the, you know, the spine elements. So instead of that color, which really didn't work well, I'm going to grab my Copic and we're going to go full deep magenta. And what that does is, you know, on the color spectrum, green is opposite of red. So magenta is going to really pop out and help, you know, sell this a little bit better as a dragon. Plus it gives it a little bit of color pop. I'm sure you've heard that terminology before. Needs color pop. Some type of color pop. Yeah, that's good. See that what that's going to do is it's going to again accentuate that silhouette of that corner of his eye right there, and that's what I want. Okay, so let's go and put you guys on time lapse as I put in the color. And here's where I'm going to land with this one. I'm having some challenges with my highlight marker. Typically I will use either this jelly roll pen, or possibly something like this, which is made by Faber-Castell, that is a like a white acrylic. I think what I'm going to have to end up doing, because these pens tend to dry out, and just because the nature of the white ink that's inside, I think that probably in the future I'm just going to go ahead and have to use a brush to do all my highlights, kind of like a watercolor, but like a wash, because I didn't get, I mean, this is obviously supposed to be candy and shiny, and it's not. So I'm not too terribly happy with that. And then, you know, again, some of the highlights that just aren't there, you know, and some of my other work that I'm so much happier with. This one turned out okay, but at the end of the day, I need to find an alternate resource for white. You know, obviously utilizing the paper as the highlight is probably the best bet. It's just, you know, the way that I'm working right now, I'm needing to change a few things so I can put the highlights last. And then whenever I want to change the color just a little bit, maybe warm it up or darken it, these markers are really good, again, as that base coat. And I can go back in, let's say with a Prisma that has a warm hue to it, and I can go in and I can just, you know, put in some of those highlights. You know, I don't like using white too much, because again, white kills color, and the more white that I put in, the less and less vibrant it's going to be, and that is a no bueno. So there is, I'm trying to find them, I don't know where they went to. I do have what's called a, where did those things go to? Like a watercolor or a watercolor pencil. Here we go. This is what I was talking about. This is called a dry marker. So you go in, and it being a dry marker, it really boosts the vibrancy of the existing underlying color. You can tell that once I put that on there, it really starts to get vibrant. I think I need to order some more of these. The Koh-i-Noor is just a fantastic company. Yeah, see, the more and more I put over this, literally, it completely changes the dynamic of the color, and it makes it more saturated, more vibrant. And I love these dry markers for that reason. And plus, there's a little bit of translucency to it. Whenever you get in there, it mixes with all the color. See, I've got color pencil down, so it pushes that color pencil into the paper and into the tooth. So literally, he's now much more vibrant than he used to be. Yeah. And these are made by Koh-i-Noor, and this is a dry marker. See? Dry marker. And then I go to something like this. So we'll sharpen this one. So it's like a pink hue. And literally, it just, oh, it's so nice. It brings back that vibrancy that maybe the white may have killed a little bit. Let's see if I put that in here. You know, literally, it just makes it so much more beautiful. And you can put it on top of pretty much anything, that dry marker, and it brings out the tooth of the paper a little bit, which I like a lot. So, yeah, see, I found my dry markers. See, I've got a green, that green hue right there. I tried to do like a reflective light situation right here, and it just didn't work out quite the way I wanted it to. And that's okay. That happens sometimes, especially in traditional art. You know, just like Bob Ross says, it's a happy accident. You know? So, he was fun. Don't know his name. But as I go through, I can just start putting this dry marker, and you see how it makes that so much more vibrant. And you can go in, and what's really cool is then You know, if I go in and put a little bit of alcohol, like a blender. I wonder if I have a blender. I should. Yeah, here we go. So here's an alcohol blender. Okay. See what that does is it kind of treats it and makes it into like a watercolor. It's so pretty. Yep. So that's it for today, guys. Please like and subscribe. If you like what you see, please hit that notification bell, because what that'll do is it'll send a notification to you when I have a new video. I've actually got a contest alert, so tell all your friends. I'm pairing up with SenseLab to give away one of their tablets. So hopefully by the end of the week I'll have a video out to you guys, and you can share on social media, share on Twitter, share on Instagram, and make comments of the video, and I will be choosing one of you guys to receive a SenseLab tablet. For those of you guys who don't know who SenseLab is, SenseLab is the wonderful company. Here's their logo, SenseLab. I guess that ZenseLab, whatever. They're actually some previous Wacom employees that have established a company that really makes incredible products. Check out the description, or check out the link in the description below for the review I did of their most recent tablet bundle. And their company is wonderful, and you know, they contacted me and said, hey, would you like to give away one of our tablets? And I said, actually, I'd like one of your tablets. I'm just kidding. They provided me with that tablet you just saw, and it is absolutely phenomenal, and I love it. And they're going to be coming out with something new at the first of the year. I can't talk about it, but it is going to be really cool. So hopefully we'll be able to utilize, or not utilize, we'll be able to do something with that as well whenever it comes out. But free tablet, guys. Think about that. That's like a $300 or $400 value. So that being said, we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.